Hello there, and thank you for joining us here on Focus on Africa, coming to you from BBC World News. Now, on the 21st of September 2013, 4 masked gunmen attacked the Westgate shopping mall in Nairobi, and the siege was over. 4 days later, 67 people were dead. The Somali militant group Al-Shabaab said its members were responsible for the attack. Well, today, 7 years on, and in the only trial relating to the attack, 2 men have been found guilty of helping the militants to stage the assault. A third man was acquitted on all charges. Sentencing will take place later this month. The BBC's Ferdinand Amondi is in Nairobi for us. Ferdinand.
Hello, Lucas. Yes, I was there today, and in the courtrooms, Kenya still has the coronavirus restrictions and social distance in place, but this was a very, very big story in the Kenyan context. After 7 years of waiting, the judgment was finally read, and there was a battery of journalists there from all over the world watching the story, and a few of the relatives were allowed in. And after 4 hours of listening to the judgment, the verdict was finally read, and this is the story. It took the chief magistrate and the translator over 4 hours to read the judgment. In the end, Kenyan citizens Mohammed Ahmed Abdi and Hussein Hassan Mustafa were found guilty of conspiracy to commit a terrorist act and giving support to a terrorist group. Among the evidence were phone records which showed hundreds of conversations between the convicts and mall attackers, and testimonies from more than 40 witnesses, including survivors of the raid.
I'm satisfied that the prosecution has proved these charges against the first and the fourth accused persons. I find them guilty and I convict them accordingly.
The convicts face up to 20 years in jail and will be sentenced on the 22nd of October.
Consequently, he is acquitted under Section.
But the third suspect, Liban Abdullahi, was cleared of all charges and set free. The Somali refugee was a brother to one of the 4 attackers, all of whom the court heard were killed. He also had a Kenyan ID for which he was cleared of having acquired it illegally. This case has taken 7 years to conclude, and some will see it as delayed justice, especially for the man who the court has now set free. But the prosecution says this is a victory, especially in a country where convictions for terror-related offenses are few and far between. In 2013, armed men raided the popular Westgate Mall in central Nairobi on a Saturday afternoon when human traffic was high. The siege lasted 5 days, and by the end of it, the state says 67 people, including the attackers, were killed. Kenya remains on high alert from the threat of Al-Shabaab, which continues to launch attacks targeting people and critical infrastructure, especially on the northern frontiers.
Well, Ferdinand, what sort of reaction has there been to the verdict that was read out today?
Well, for many Kenyans, this is an encouragement that the prosecution is finally getting these charges across the line. Like I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult in Kenya to prove terror-related charges. In fact, even in this case, at first there were 12 counts and 4 suspects presented before court. 1 was released without a case to answer, and even the ones that were proven today, it was the charges of conspiracy to commit a crime and supporting terror group that were proven. The others, including being a member of a terrorist organization, were dismissed by the court, and that's why the prosecution was relieved that at least they got 2 convictions for which they could get up to 20 years for the work done over the 7 years.
Do you know what, Ferdinand, there has been so much criticism around this, the event, particularly the government's handling, the government forces, the police forces, the army. Has there ever been any inquiry into that?
Well, there has been a lot of criticism about the way the Kenya security personnel handles its cases, and there have been wins and losses in some cases. And the cabinet secretary at that time, who was adjudged to have performed dismally in terms of his performances, eventually left government, but people observed that he eventually became a governor. So there are suggestions that maybe Kenyan voters actually love to promote controversy politically. But on the flip side, when it comes to security services, a lot of people say there had been improvement, especially in terms of communication. When another attack happened in 2015, and even in 2019, there was better coordination from the security personnel. Remember, at Westgate, there was a friendly fire. There was a security officer that was killed by members of the army. So Since that, there has been a bit of streamlining in terms of where the attacks happened, and in 2019 we saw better coordination. But remember, there have been 2 attacks since then. 2015, it was the worst, where at least 147 people died in the Garissa attack, and Kenyans would prefer for these attacks not to happen at all, as opposed to seeing coordination after it has occurred.
Okay, Ferdinand Omondi, thank you very much for that update. Thank you.